Okay, this is the second part of our introduction to calculus. In the first video, we just looked at what a gradient was. And if all a gradient is, you have 2 points here, it's finding out what this change here is. That's called the rise, and it's putting it over this change here called the run. And now, but the calculus part is sort of different. We're still got the same equation, y equals x squared. So if you put in 3, if we put it into the function, 3 times 3, the value of the function at 3, f of 3 is 9. But what we do in calculus, in fact, in the calculus we do in this country, we talk about a change. And we say that we're going to take 3 and we're going to add h to it. Add h to it. That's a change in x. And then our y value, our x value, our first value is 3, but our second x value would be 3 plus h. Well, that makes sense. 3 plus h. But if we wanted to find the y value up here, all we'd do is take 3 plus h and put it into the equation so it becomes 3 plus h squared. Well, if we were finding gradients, we'd just subtract the two y values, subtract this 3 plus h squared minus 9, that would give us the change in y. Well, we'll have to think, why is it 6h plus h squared? I'll tell you in a second. But 3 plus h minus 3, that gives you h. That should make sense. Now, all we're going to do is look for a new way of writing the gradient. We're going to go f of 3 plus h, which is 3 plus h squared, and we're going to subtract it from f of 3. So we're going to go 3 plus h squared minus 3 squared, and 3 plus h minus h is h. Well, that's another way of looking at the gradient. But if we do some algebra on this, if we take 3 plus h and we multiply it by 3 plus h, we'll do FOIL on this part carefully. 3 times 3 will give you 9. H times h will give you h squared. But you'll have an inside product and an outside product. Remember, there's 4 products, and it's going to give you 3h and 3h, and together they make 6h. There's always 2 times these things multiplied together. 2 times 3 times h. There's always a 6h there. You have to really multiply that up. That makes sense to you. Now over here, we're minusing 3 squared. Hey, something nice happens. 9 minus 9. Well, that just leaves. And all we have is 6h plus h squared all over h. Well, here's something, and we do it in this what's called first principles of calculus. We factor out the h. We factor out the h, and then it cancels with this h here. And now we've got a new way of writing the gradient. The gradient of this whole gradient here is really just the number 6 plus h. Now in calculus we do something a bit surprising. We think about gradients, but then we think about something else pretty interesting. We think about this h part becoming incredibly close to 0. Newton used to call it the infinitesimal. And what we do is we let h approach 0. It can't be 0 because if we were dividing by 0, that'd be bad math. We can't do that. But we could divide by something incredibly tiny, close to 0. And if that was incredibly close to 0, the gradient would be 6. And that means if you have 2 points that are really close together, the gradient rated 3 is 6. Okay, well, that's just an example getting started with numbers of what the idea of calculus is. It's finding a gradient, differential calculus, finding the gradient of 2 points where h has got really small. Okay, so that's the deal. That's our second little introduction to calculus.